Those individuals had always been quite transparent about their true desires, noble thoughts filled with lofty and intriguing ideas. Yet when confronted with their primal instincts in the vacant classroom, they were rendered insignificant. But it all starts with the protagonist in his classroom. While he was immersed in his studies, Sakai Ki was called upon by the teacher. He mumbled that he had no clue. The reality was that the protagonist felt exhausted, drowsy, and struggled to grasp what was being discussed. Staying in that classroom all day just to study was even more grueling for him. Out of the blue, Kai got a text from a guy urging him to check something out. It was a photo of a girl, and he wondered what the guy was thinking, sending such a thing during class. The protagonist never realized he wasn't opposed to that kind of imagery. Yet he wasn't particularly fond of it either. He wasn't sure if he had a unique issue with it, but both school and daily life felt monotonous. He longed for something interesting to occur. In essence, he was just your average, dull high school teen. During the break, the guy who sent the picture approached Ki, complaining about his lack of response. The protagonist admitted she wasn't his type. The student was taken aback. As Ki didn't seem interested in such images, Ki replied that he hadn't been into that sort of thing for years. His friends questioned whether he was even a man. One of them whispered, pointing out that the girl nearby was somewhat attractive, prompting everyone to look. The girl in question was Meishita, a classmate sitting next to Ki, her face devoid of emotion. Kent was slightly surprised as she subtly glanced in his direction while his friends continued to interrogate him about her. Looking away, the protagonist dismissed her as nothing special, prompting a sigh from his friend who decided to lecture him. He narrated how her curves were the most prominent in the entire class, along with all her other features. There was a girl who rarely spoke, so people often overlooked her. However, she was the type to have numerous secret admirers. The issue was that no matter how much they tried to engage her, Miyashita would always ignore them. Building a relationship with her was challenging. He inquired, and his friend lamented that he lacked the time for such matters. Then he noticed the girl looking at him again, but she quickly averted her gaze. It was the second time that day, but I should have just stood up and left without giving her a chance to ask anything. That night, the protagonist wrapped up his delivery job and asked his colleague, Hareta, if she was done too. Hareta agreed, commenting that it was standard. High school students were no longer allowed to work there, and she was sent home. He asked where everyone else had gone. She sighed, suggesting they were probably just wasting time, so he shouldn't worry too much when one of the other guys came over to chat with her. Hareta looked visibly annoyed at the interruption. The other guy claimed he had something cool to show Ki. As they isolated themselves to talk, the protagonist immediately suspected it was another girl's picture. They insisted this one was on a whole different level and showed the image to Ki. As expected, the protagonist didn't recognize her, and then he explained that the girl was named Yami, boasting a large following on social media. She frequently streamed live, thanking viewers for their gifts, often in revealing outfits, raking in cash from subscriptions. Even after all that, Ki had to concede she was exceptionally beautiful. It was astonishing that he had never felt this way before. That girl also appeared to engage in other types of work beyond just taking pictures. They were quite impressive, but Ki noticed the classroom in the background, resembling his own study space. He felt puzzled, wondering if it was merely a coincidence. The guys were staring intently at the screen, laughing that she was so captivating she even caught Ki's heart. It was surprising, leaving Kei even more bewildered, questioning if he truly liked her. In fact, her eyes intrigued him. She had a beauty mark beneath her left eye and a pair of curves larger than average. After staring for a while, his colleague took the phone back, needing it, and promised to send the photos to Ki later. He decided to change clothes and head home until Hareta suggested they walk home together, and the protagonist agreed. On the way, she asked why Aki's mother never returned home. He agreed, as his mother had actually vanished. This left his father in a state of depression, consumed by work. Hareta felt sympathy for the protagonist. He was still in school, enduring all of this, but Ki replied that without his father, he wouldn't be who he was today. Now, he just wanted to wait until he could earn enough to compensate for everything his father had done. Hareta's heart ached for the protagonist, still in school, facing all this turmoil. But Keith countered, saying without his father, he wouldn't be the person he is today. Now he just yearns to save enough to atone for his father's actions. Feeling inspired, Hareta resolved to discover something that Ki would approve of. After all, he needed to save her life. That's when Keith noticed Harada's balloons were surprisingly large for a girl. Nobisang stared, inquiring about what was troubling her, and the protagonist responded it was nothing, averting his gaze. Guilt gnawed at him for his odd behavior since he spotted that other photo, even stealing glances at his coworker. He resolved to check Miyashi's face again the following day to dispel his uncertainties. The next day, it was Keith who watched his classmate with keen interest. The beauty mark beneath her eye matched, and he hadn't anticipated her balloons being so large. Yet he lacked enough evidence to confirm they were the same person. A clearer view of her face would help. Out of nowhere, the girl glanced at the protagonist again before looking away. He felt she truly was stunning, just like the fuss in the photo. The girl in class and the one in the picture were indeed alike. He pondered whether he should just ask her outright, but if Miyashina denied it, he'd be mortified for having asked such a bold question. It was daunting to approach someone and inquire about revealing photos like that. Despite being classmates, he knew nothing about Miyashita, even after studying together. They had never exchanged words. Other guys seemed to only discuss her looks, which made him uncomfortable. He hesitated to approach her. Asking so many questions for hidden reasons made the protagonist, Agnes, anxious, unsure how she could captivate him so much. There shouldn't be anything remarkable. It was just a resemblance, even if she was like Miyashita. Kita soon found himself imagining the two as the same person, surprising himself. He spent the entire day daydreaming about Miyashita, but it shouldn't have bothered him. He resolved to refocus on his routine, yet every day felt monotonous. He had no idea how much longer he could endure this life by Key's side, even growing weary of his part-time job. That's when he realized he had left his notebook in the classroom. He decided to rush back to retrieve it. The antagonist spotted Miyashita ascending the stairs, still not having gone home. Ken wondered where she was headed. He followed her, curiosity piqued as he recalled those earlier photos. He trailed her up the stairs, observing from a distance to see what she would do. Then something shocking occurred. Suddenly Maya began taking several revealing photos of herself, leaving him stunned. He wondered if it was truly her. The protagonist was conflicted about how to react after witnessing the entire scene. And right there, in the middle of school, he couldn't even fathom why he had been staring at her for so long, or why he felt so drawn to her. Suddenly, Miyashita became aware of Key's presence. They locked eyes, both taken aback. Then they quickly looked away. He mumbled an apology. She asked why he was there so late and what he was looking at. He confessed he was curious if the girl in the photos was indeed her, given the desks were the same. He sighed, realizing it was a poor moment to ask. Yet he still decided to show Miyashita the photos and inquire if it was really her. That was all he wanted to know. Then she fell into complete silence. At that moment, Keith apologized, admitting he didn't even know what he was saying or why he was so eager to find out. After a brief pause, the girl sighed and said, smiling, realizing she had been caught. She asked what he planned to do about it, and inquired about his plans to handle it. Key found her behavior odd, while Ashton insisted she was fine, claiming it was all his fault. The protagonist, confused, listened as she remarked on his perpetual boredom with everything, be it in class or with friends. Key was taken aback, asking how she knew all of this. She then turned to him, asking if he wanted to join her for something fun. This left him utterly bewildered. Miyashita proposed he become her photographer, finally pulling Key from his dull routine. Despite her insistence, the protagonist hesitated. The organist faltered, averting his gaze at her unexpected question. She clarified that her online videos garnered donations, and her photos ranked highly. In truth, she was contemplating hiring an assistant, and he inadvertently stumbled upon this fact. It was a fantastic opportunity. The crowd was supportive. They could enjoy themselves together. Miyashita departed, allowing him time to ponder, saying she'd await his response the next day. The next day arrived, and Key remained uncertain, lost in thought about his options. He was astonished by how much time had passed. In fact, it was me. She was engaging him, pulling him from his daydream. Now he was officially her assistant. Key froze in shock when she was showing off in front of everyone. She approached him, assuring him it was fine. She promised to do whatever he wished, but he had to help her with photography. Doing whatever it took to ensure the photos turned out beautifully. Suddenly, Key jolted awake. It had all been merely a dream. Finally recalling he had returned home the previous day. Until that moment, he had never faced issues with girls before. This was his first experience. At school, they crossed paths again, and He recalled her request for photos. He still hadn't made a decision since yesterday and wondered what to say, now that they had met again. However, she simply walked past, ignoring him as one of his friends approached the protagonist. His friend inquired why Ki was suddenly trying to engage with Miyashita, to which he replied it was nothing significant. The friend acknowledged Ki's feelings for her, but doubted he could connect with her. No one had seen other guys successfully talk to her, and Ki should know that. Yet it was unusual for his friend to see Kei interested in a girl, and he clarified it wasn't like that at all. Regardless, the students made their way to the audio-visual room as class was about to start. They quickly settled into their seats, and Ki chose to sit as far away as he could to catch some sleep. With Miyashita ignoring him, he felt no urge to do anything engaging. But to his utter astonishment, Shira herself took the seat next to him as class commenced. The protagonist was completely baffled by her. Since the previous day, she had been the source of his anxiety. Suddenly, Ki noticed her fidgeting with her skirt. The fro was utterly perplexed. To his surprise, she wore something quite unusual underneath. At that moment, it all clicked. Why she chose to sit beside him in class, the main character. He felt uneasy watching the scene unfold next to him, pondering, what was up with this girl? In that instant, I handed him my issue of a paper for him to snap a picture with his phone. He stared at her, utterly shocked. After all, she had to be a bit off her rocker to pull this stunt right in the middle of class where everyone could see. Kei was witnessing more than he bargained for, yet she smiled, pushing him to hurry. Ultimately, her insistence won out. He grabbed his phone, the shot she desired. After snapping a few photos that Keith thought were too much, but they might actually have invited him to touch just that area. He was taken aback by her words and even more astonished when she seized his hand to show she was serious. Finally, after the entire scene, my heart wondered if that was sufficient. He realized she had merely been toying with him. He spent the whole time capturing images of her, being teased, powerless to change it. After class, he showed her the photos, and she managed to rank high on the site. Miyashita inquired how it felt to take the pictures, saying he must be thrilled. Even though he stayed silent, the girl chuckled, knowing he was an open book. With that, she turned to leave, saying that he should respond to her invitation by the next day, and Ki nodded. Despite Ki's dull days, he kept on, living a tranquil life devoid of chaos. He thought Miyashita's actions, on the other hand, were always fraught with danger. Getting paid to assist his classmate felt odd, yet Ki couldn't deny his desire to be closer to her. In the end, the protagonist received a present from Miyashita because he agreed to work for her. During class, he couldn't help but glance at his classmates. The whole time, she seemed a bit reckless acting like that. Yet Ashley managed to take those herself. All those photos on her own. That's when he suddenly realized she was approaching him. He inquired about her intentions, and she responded. He had been staring too long, making another girl in class uneasy. The protagonist, taken aback, apologized, attributing it to the previous day. He felt powerless to change things. She suggested heading to the infirmary, to which Ki remarked that she was quite the puzzle. They managed to slip away, claiming she felt ill, a blatant fabrication. With no teachers around, they seized the chance to be alone. They intended to work, but Ki was astonished. They were really going to do it right there in the infirmary. It seemed absurd. Miyashita insisted she needed his assistance now that she was paying him. It was clear he was intrigued as well. He should have been quaking with excitement, yet Kai remained unfazed by her teasing. At last, Miyashita directed him on how to film properly. They began recording Meishia, who expressed gratitude to the viewers. That day, they planned to switch things up a bit, revealing she had an assistant this time. But he wasn't her boyfriend. Regardless, she was about to engage in some daring activities. Once more, she began, testing his boundaries from such a close range with her hand. She chuckled, reminding him she hadn't granted permission to touch yet, joking during the recording about needing to avoid being attacked. Her assistant wouldn't actually harm her. Nevertheless, she decided to proceed to the main event. Mashia was about to reveal something useful and asked everyone watching to stay tuned until the end. Finally, everything was set for this moment. Yet, it still wasn't flawless. The girl climbed onto the bed, stating they would begin immediately. As for her assistant, she needed help as per the script. Then she reclined on the bed, whispering for the protagonist to hurry. I wasn't certain if this was truly acceptable. He couldn't protest and followed her directions. Those scenes made him realize it was astonishing, despite the entire scene of him admiring the girl's balloon. Staying calm was essential. Getting caught would be a disaster. As they continued, my thoughts were, you guiding Key to move closer. Suddenly, a voice interrupted them. A classmate approached, concerned that Miyashita might be unwell. She had also brought the girl's belongings and decided to pull back the curtain. But Miyashita replied that she was fine. Still in the midst of changing, she asked her friend to leave her things outside. After expressing gratitude to her friend for the assistance, she turned her focus back to Key, instructing him to keep filming, even with someone outside. The girl outside questioned if Miyashita found guys annoying, always staring at them like that. He's told to continue filming, even with someone out there. The girl outside wondered if Miyashita found guys irritating, always gazing at them like that. Miyashita sympathized with her friend, feeling guilty about her struggles, and her friend pointed out that Miyashita herself hadn't really taken much care to protect herself either. Curious, the friend inquired about Kai, the one who had taken Miyashita to the infirmary. He dodged the question, suggesting Kai was likely just skipping class. Staying on the subject, the friend cautioned her to watch out for Kai, who had been giving her odd looks. As they focused on the recording, Mia agreed to be cautious. They debated whether Kai might actually have feelings for her. It was a humorous moment since Kai was eavesdropping, and Mia approached him. She asked if he had developed feelings for her. While they were preoccupied with the recording, out of nowhere, a peculiar noise broke the silence. Her friend outside wondered what that sound was. Mia felt anxious as her friend suggested something strange. She laughed it off, insisting it wasn't what it seemed. She claimed she was merely changing her outfit, but they were about to start recording. Things escalated into various scenes. He felt uneasy, knowing he was involved. Listening in while working with a classmate, he worried he might jeopardize his future over this. Once the recordings wrapped up, and where's TZ now? It had served its purpose. Her friend mentioned she was about to leave. Mia approached her, apologizing for being preoccupied, and her friend reassured her it was okay, promising to inform the teachers that Mia had just been resting. They found themselves alone again. Mia chuckled, realizing how close they came to being caught. At least they managed to get a decent recording. If things continued like this, she was eager to keep recording to elevate her online ranking. Even though Key recognized it was wrong, he was also looking forward to the next opportunity. 3 days passed since she uploaded the video. Mia noted that the editing seemed off. At least the views were climbing, just as she had hoped. He asked what their next move should be, knowing it was a bit late to bring it up. But it was surprising how she always engaged in risky activities publicly, wondering if Mia had her parents' approval for this, or if it was a secret. Key's role was consistently to manage the camera and provide support, until she casually revealed that her entire life revolved around someone else. But she urged him not to overthink it. He should just focus on enjoying himself while working. Even though he agreed, he felt like he didn't really know much about his classmate. Time passed, and the protagonist kept assisting his classmate with video shoots and photos. On that day, she planned to do a live stream where she would be changing her clothes, and Key continued to help Mia. Those extreme videos in plain low were quite different from what he was accustomed to. Key's role was always to hold the camera and ensure the recordings turned out well enough. His task involved ensuring the footage was of sufficient quality. He focused on making the recordings look just right. In class, he was engrossed in one of Mayash's videos when a friend unexpectedly interrupted him. He remarked that it was unusual for the main character to be consuming that sort of media, even poking fun at Mia for it. He claimed Key had started watching those videos solely because she was around. As always, the girl brushed him off. Key's friends continued to chuckle before returning to their seats. Out of nowhere, Kyber sent a message demanding he record after class, furious that he had been watching her videos during lessons. The protagonist sensed trouble, but Maya insisted it was okay. They weren't in the main building, and no one would notice. She grumbled that he was always a coward, hesitating at crucial moments. Having gone to the school restroom, Mia decided to just use her uniform. They had ample time to get ready. She anticipated Key would perform well with the recordings that day, and he wondered what the plan was. In response, she asked him to grab a picture from her social media. Daily posts helped her attract more followers. Key understood why they needed to do this in a restroom. Muya explained that some people were odd and had specific preferences, even if it was a small group. It was essential to cater to all kinds of people for her job. Ki pondered Maya's earlier words and lost focus, so she urged him to speed up and get to work. After snapping a few photos, she felt quite pleased with the outcome. It seemed they had captured enough. That was when they were startled by the sound of footsteps drawing near. She quickly shoved Ki to hide. They remained concealed in the restroom, as Mia suggested this was a perfect moment to record a video. The protagonist was taken aback by her constant boldness. Meanwhile, they heard some guys entering the restroom. She prepared to record, and Ki was slightly stunned by the whole scenario. Yet she pressed on, as if it was the most normal thing ever. He was unsure how to respond, or if he should even be witnessing this. But he kept filming the girl effortlessly. It was astonishing how she had the guts to film while they were in the restroom of others. Just outside, the students outside appeared somewhat taken aback by the sound of someone using the restroom when it should have been vacant. It was more than a little concerning, since it seemed they had been discovered, and Mia asked what they should do next. He figured they needed to act. The noise was attracting attention, and the protagonist quickly resolved it with his jacket. Outside, the students noticed the noise had ceased. They figured it was probably just a plumbing problem. Yet Mia showed no signs of stopping. That's when he understood this girl was just as unhinged as he had suspected from the start. Later, she continued to laugh at the whole thing. The situation she had put the protagonist through. It turned into a total disaster after all. She questioned why he had used his uniform that way, and Ki explained it was the only idea he had at the time. Regardless, she expressed her gratitude since he had assisted her. He truly seemed prepared for anything. He mentioned it was just a spur-of-the-moment decision. He hadn't thought it through, but Mia chuckled, saying that's how the best recordings come about. He hoped to avoid that kind of scenario again, and she assured him she wouldn't do anything like that again, laughing as she spoke. He was likely the only one who knew this side of her. In fact, he found himself wanting to see more. Getting to know his classmate was becoming enjoyable. Days went by, and Mia invited him out again, this time to a different place. Initially, he felt completely relaxed at home. That was until she called, reminding him of their 11 o'clock meeting. He felt drowsy, and as the time passed, he began to worry she was just messing with him again. But soon enough, she arrived, apologizing for the wait. He was taken aback by her appearance. She laughed, noticing he seemed enchanted by her allure. He downplayed it, saying it wasn't like that. She just looked different today, dressed casually instead of in her uniform. Her response made Maya chuckle, grasping his meaning. It was the complete opposite of her usual attire. She also wore glasses to blend in and avoid recognition. Additionally, she had altered her makeup, which likely contributed to Ki finding her look unusual. The protagonist agreed, thinking sometimes it's better to mention it. So he complimented her, saying she looked better than usual. He noticed her blush. Moya laughed, thanking him for his kind words. He brushed off her comment and inquired about their destination, to which she responded that she had everything planned this time. He just needed to follow her quietly. They stopped at a clothing store where Mia asked which outfit suited her. She wanted to select new items for her recordings. He asked if she usually shopped there, and she said she typically bought online. But she was curious about his thoughts on her selections. Still, the protagonist didn't grasp her intentions. After all, she rarely wore clothes to begin with, and he clearly didn't understand anything. It was evident from his expression. On their way, they entered another women's store, and he felt anxious, thinking it was inappropriate for him to be there. Nevertheless, she pulled him inside, claiming they could justify it as a couple. Sometimes couples shop together in those stores, and she kept asking for his opinion on the outfits. No matter how much she inquired, the protagonist viewed all the clothes the same. He lacked a sense of fashion. Mia noted she could only decide after trying them on, surprising Ki. They could try on the clothes over what they were already wearing, so she led him to see how they appeared. She brought him along to show him their appearance. Kate mentioned she was aware of her exact measurements, yet she favored selecting tighter outfits to accentuate her figure. She demonstrated how she mixed and matched the items she had purchased previously. Now they fit her even better. It's clear they'd be ideal for recordings. He grumbled that her choices were off, trying to mask his own anxiety, but I kept joking with him, which made him quickly pull the fitting room curtain shut, calling her foolish. However, Mia grabbed him, insisting she needed his genuine feedback. That's why she asked him to evaluate her selections. At last, the protagonist blurted out that she looked great. Yet he urged her to cover up quickly. It wasn't wise to linger like that in the fitting room. After a moment of hesitation, Maya agreed. She declared she would buy the outfits anyway and requested he wait for her. K1 wanted to know if they were set to record, and the girl nodded, acknowledging they needed to hurry or risk missing out. The protagonist inquired about their next destination, and she replied they were off to watch some films. He was confused but simply followed her. Even though he had never seen that specific film before, it appeared dull. He just wanted to doze off, but Muya quickly grabbed his attention when she pointed out that he had noticed how tedious the movie was. He realized she had picked this film specifically for its boredom, yet she had covered all the costs. She replied it was precisely because she wanted him to ignore the film and focus entirely on her. Understanding her intentions, Key felt a bit stunned. He asked what was happening, and she told him to hush. After all, they were approaching the exciting part. Still, he felt uneasy since there were other viewers in the theater. Regardless, she refused to relent, as he wasn't even interested in the movie, and she had captured Key's focus. Despite his nerves, he told her to behave, since they weren't even recording to act like that. I set her aside, satisfied with his performance so far in the recordings. She believed this would suffice. Yet every time she teased him, she could sense his heart racing. And Mia let him keep playing with her balloons, aware that he had been thinking about them the previous night. Each time she held both of his hands, he could continue, even though the protagonist resisted and attempted to scold her for it. Mia only grew happier as Key's reactions were priceless. The protagonist felt this girl becoming wilder than ever. But to their utter astonishment, someone interrupted them. That person was none other than Hirata, Key's co-worker, who asked what was happening. A tense silence enveloped the room because the protagonist could also be recognized. Here to acknowledge that the protagonist is capable of understanding as well Maya's predicament. Yet Maya didn't bother to shield herself from a crucial detail you should notice in that scenario. She felt completely at ease. In fact, he had completely forgotten she thrived in public settings, relishing the thrill of being seen. Ignoring Harada, Maya urged Kita to proceed, even though he thought he should intervene. After realizing they were determined to keep going, Harada shot them an angry glare and exited the cinema. He felt as if he had sabotaged everything. He had allowed his colleague to witness that awful moment, which would likely lead to complications later. Later, Mia noticed his reaction and inquired about the other girl, prompting Key to clarify that Harada was a colleague. With that, they opted to leave the cinema too. But Harada couldn't shake off the images she had witnessed. She hadn't anticipated seeing Key in such a situation, especially with the girl everyone was buzzing about. Deep down, Harada sensed something was amiss, and she recognized that the girl from the internet and the one with children were indeed the same individual. This implied that the one capturing her photos had to be Key himself. This left her uncertain about how to behave at work the following day. Everything that transpired in the cinema, pretending as if nothing was out of the ordinary. He went to work like nothing had happened, hiding his feelings as he greeted his Harada understood he was an open book, and she approached him to apologize for rushing him, handing him something to deliver. The tension between them was incredibly awkward, but there was nothing to be done to alter the situation. She wanted to act naturally, but before she could speak, the others suddenly mentioned Yummy. Instantly, both of them stiffened. Yami was seen collaborating with an assistant, which infuriated everyone. It appeared Muya was quite fond of her assistant, allowing him to take charge of everything in the videos. After all, the assistant consistently did far more than he should, which was unfair to the viewers. It seemed Yamming was getting quite close to her assistant, and they were likely dating now. Finally, Kei decided to step out for a delivery to distract himself from the discomfort of the entire workplace scene. Harada sensed Kei was avoiding her, assuming he probably didn't want her to inquire about that girl. As expected, they must have been dating, even wanting to act like that in front of others. She never imagined Kai would be the type to have such tastes. It set him apart from the rest. That girl seemed like a negative influence on him, and it posed a risky situation for a minor. Later, it was Karate who reached out to Kita to chat and invite him for dinner. With that, she brought him to her home, and he was a bit puzzled, but even here, she herself was unsure of what to do next. It was her first time inviting a guy into her room, and above all, it was Key, the person she was most intrigued by. She needed to try to calm herself for now. Since she had invited him for dinner, she decided to whip up something quickly. Sometime later, they finished their meal. The protagonist expressed gratitude for the meal, praising its deliciousness. The girl beamed, relieved after her nervousness about inviting Key over. Heron then shared her sadness, noting that inviting him was the only way they could truly connect. Finally, they arrived at the time. It was the same time as yesterday at the cinema. That's when the heretic mentioned wanting to ask him something. She inquired if the girl who accompanied him the previous day was indeed the one everyone had been gossiping about. Keith stammered a denial, but Harada confidently claimed she already knew the truth. It was clear from the photos she had taken. Her fashion sense was impeccable, and she was stunning. With a beauty mark on her face, it was undeniable they were the same person, despite Key's efforts to conceal her identity. Harada had managed to uncover the truth. She asserted that Yami was a girl from his school, the same girl he had gone out with recently. The protagonist felt anxious, attempting to clarify his situation. However, she reassured him it was fine, promising to keep it a secret, which eased his mind. Then Harada questioned why he was involved with someone like her. After all, she had witnessed their behavior in the cinema, and it seemed quite inappropriate. Kitop fumbled for words, trying to justify himself, but insisted he wasn't dating or seeing her, if that was her concern. Though he struggled to articulate it, he explained that Maya often provoked him or used him for her own gain. It was impossible for someone like him to truly connect with her. He described it as a complicated situation, but Harada cut him off, stating that this kind of behavior was genuinely concerning. They were both still minors, and as someone older, Harada couldn't just expect Key to take responsibility for any consequences. Since they were still students and he likely had a family supporting him, she worried that might be affecting his choices. Harada believed it was wrong for him to be compensated for such activities and questioned if he had even received permission from the school to take photos. When the protagonist fell silent, she continued to express how everything they were doing was misguided. If they were caught taking photos without consent, it wouldn't just lead to suspension, it could escalate to something far worse. It might sound odd, but Harada felt that Mina was negatively influencing Key's life. Still, she understood that Mia likely had her own reasons for her actions. That's why she wanted Key to realize that getting involved with her wouldn't bring anything positive. Mia might also be acting out to seek validation in an inappropriate manner. Kate countered that deep down, Maya was just an ordinary girl. It was clear that something was happening behind the scenes. Her expression revealed she was being compelled to act this way. They had only just met, and Key hadn't yet discussed it with her. When the moment was right, he planned to bring it up. Moreover, she was an intriguing person. People tended to keep their distance, but whenever Key was with her, he experienced things he never imagined. That was when Harada realized something. Whenever he spoke of Mia, he appeared genuinely happy and engaged. This made her uncomfortable, as she wished to have more of Key's attention rather than letting him be with someone like Mia. That's when Harada asked if he could spend the night at her place, holding his hand. She moved closer, asking him. She immediately turned, bright red with embarrassment. Surprised, Heron pondered what had prompted her to speak so boldly all of a sudden. The protagonist reflected on it, causing Harada to worry as it was evident he was overthinking. In that moment, Harada instantly regretted her words and began to retreat, asking him to forget everything she had just said. Despite that, she didn't want to let Key go. Instead, she aimed to spark his interest. Rather than just an overnight stay, she wanted to captivate him. So instead, she proposed that they were set for a photo shoot. And that's how they found themselves in this predicament, where Herod posed dramatically while Key snapped photos. Herod appreciated her outfit choice, yet she felt uneasy. Since Keaton didn't appear to be engaged at all, she understood why. She was aware of his preferences, but it seemed he wasn't keen on simple shots. So here I have compiled all the curbs she could muster from deep within her heart, and a look of frozen astonishment. When he inquired about what was happening, Herida explained they were just going to do the usual photo session they had planned. She began mimicking what they likely did regularly. The Key remained in shock. Hearing her request for him to take her pictures, he had no option but to comply, and Harada felt a wave of embarrassment. He appeared particularly intrigued, snapping numerous pictures in quick succession. It seemed he genuinely enjoyed that kind of intense experience. But Harada was preoccupied with something deeper. She began to the emotions Mia must have felt and thought it might be better to reveal even more. She was so immersed in the moment, swept away by her feelings. But Karen hoped it would be sufficient to pique Key's interest. Still, have a pleasant day. Kenny's intense gaze made her feel a bit happy despite everything. Even so, I had a backup plan in case he ever shared those photos online, and he nervously assured me he wouldn't. With that, they continued capturing more images than before, which caused her. Hirata began to lose her composure and set everything else aside to concentrate. Finally, Hirata asked what he thought of the scenery, and he stared, thinking that it was just as expansive as Maya's. Realizing his own thoughts, the protagonist struggled to restrain himself. He praised her, saying she was truly stunning. She even appeared more mature since, after all, she was a tall woman. Heretic kept waiting for more compliments, and he obliged, saying she had a slender waist and was a beautiful woman. Then, Hirata urged Key not to hesitate and to keep snapping more pictures, even as he hesitated and gazed longer than necessary. Her skin was as pale as mine. In fact, her appearance was even more stunning than anticipated. Suddenly, Hirata became anxious and started to tremble, which made Key realize that she actually caught some of his words. At that moment, he recalled that if it were Mia, she would have taken the photos with far more confidence. Typically, she was the type to cling to Key just to test and tease him as much as possible. However, things were different with Hirata. One of them didn't want to conceal, while the other seemed unaccustomed to revealing herself. Suddenly, Hirata moved closer to Key, suggesting they should take the session outside. Out of nowhere, Hirata stepped closer to Key, suggesting it was time to move the session outside. Moreover, she proposed that if he was interested, they could push their limits even further. Out of the blue, Key suddenly requested a halt. Her surprise froze her in place. She started to explain that competing with someone like Miyashita was unnecessary. She didn't need to go to such extremes to prove herself. He was perfectly fine with her, as she was. Despite her efforts for him, he felt sorry for causing her so much embarrassment. In response, Hirata rose, grasping Key's perspective, and eventually, he made the choice to leave. He expressed gratitude for the meal, and Hirata apologized for the inconvenience. It seemed she had lost control, and they could just move on from what had transpired. He concurred and departed. They would meet again at work. After he finally allowed, she exhaled deeply after everything that unfolded. It all went to waste. Hirata nearly broke down from the humiliation she experienced. Everything that transpired, she felt utterly foolish. Meanwhile, Keith reflected on how his words and actions towards Hirata had been somewhat harsh. Yet he came to realize his feelings stemmed from wanting to see Mia specifically, not anyone else. He pulled out his phone to call, but he hesitated, knowing they typically only reached out for significant matters. However, he felt anxious. Calling her just for the sake of it seemed odd. At that precise moment, his phone rang, and it was Miyashita calling. This left him puzzled. She rarely called this late, yet he answered, only to be met with silence. After a brief pause, she inquired if they could meet immediately, promising to come to wherever he was. The two men were at the park. The protagonist asked if something was wrong that prompted her call. She stayed quiet, and the protagonist pressed her again. Mia asked if he was aware because she just wanted to vent a little. He was completely lost, but as if preparing for a regular photo shoot, she got ready and asked him to start recording. The protagonist's expression turned to confusion, questioning what she was up to. Even in public, she risked getting into trouble. She acknowledged the possibility, which only made Keith panic more, yelling at her to cover up. Yet, she insisted she would only cover up after he took the pictures. Still, Keith thought she was losing it and just waved his hands in refusal. After a brief silence, the protagonist ultimately relented and agreed to snap the photo. Pictures just as she had requested earlier. With that, he turned to the photo she had asked for, but Mia suddenly dashed over and embraced him. The picture she had asked for, but Mia dashed over and embraced. From behind, catching him off guard, he felt anxious, unable to grasp her motives. He wanted to ask her about it. Her behavior was odd. Usually, she wasn't like this. Yet, she suddenly began mentioning how many people worldwide had her photos. Her mother used to take similar kinds of pictures when she was young, selling them to various men. She would secretly snap shots of her while bathing or changing. Eventually, Mia met that man after her mother permitted it. They entered the bathroom where she was. It was her mother and the man who had always bought the photos. Her mother was eager to exploit her daughter as much as possible. After a struggle to escape the situation, Maya finally succeeded in getting them both to leave. Her mother always created chaos. It escalated to the point where a neighbor came to investigate the noise. She was a frantic woman, acting uncontrollably. It was truly dreadful from that angle. Kia agreed, still feeling the weight of her hug, unsure how to respond to her words. Sympathy or advice? He never expected to hear this from her. At that moment, the protagonist began to speak. He asked if there was a better place to discuss this. Perhaps they could report the incident to the authorities in a more suitable environment. If she wanted to do that, he couldn't accompany her, but he pulled away from the embrace, leaving him puzzled about what just happened. He feared he might have chosen the wrong words, thinking she expected this reaction. Naturally, he would feel anxious after hearing all that. Then the protagonist turned to her, noticing the shh. He appeared slightly let down after hearing his words. He mentioned he had saved a bit of money and suggested she distance herself from her mother for a while. She looked away, agreeing, but Quayside felt he had once again given a strange response. It seemed he had said the wrong thing again, but he was unsure what to say at that moment. Deep down, he just wanted to understand her needs. That was when Maya suddenly interrupted his thoughts. She proposed they could go to a hotel. And so, once again, they found themselves in that place, where Mia comfortably lay down. Excitedly, she urged him to take a bath. She had already bathed earlier, so he could use the bathroom now. The protagonist was confused. This wasn't what they had been discussing, but Munya insisted she wouldn't listen if he didn't listen to her. So, heat your side and head to the bathroom. Even though he still couldn't grasp her thoughts in this situation, he recognized she was a very enigmatic girl, especially after hearing about her experiences at home. He suppressed his thoughts and attempted to calm himself. Not knowing where this was heading, maybe he should just take his time. Bath just to be cautious until suddenly, Maya burst into the bathroom where he was. Startled, the boy froze and recoiled, questioning her intentions, but Mia simply told him to be quiet, ignoring Key's protests as he told her to stop since she had already bathed. Still, Maya laughed, saying if he kept complaining, they wouldn't be able to continue what they had been doing until now. That was when she began to stare at him and, laughing after noticing his current expression, leaving Kay utterly embarrassed. He exited the bathroom to dry off, saying they would address the situation afterward, finishing what they were currently doing. In the room, the protagonist tried to steady himself. Above all, he was anxious because he hadn't brought anything to the hotel, but it should be fine. Still, this was typically a place for couples. Even so, he took a deep breath to calm himself once more. Someone like him was jumping to conclusions too quickly, until finally Maya emerged from the bathroom as well. The sight of her stepping out of the bath left him in shock, and Mia laughed at his flustered state. It was a bit too late to say anything about it, but it seemed they were ready to begin as anticipated. With that, He began to pace the room, searching for the right place and the crucial question of what they were about to embark on. But it should have been clear. After all, she was eager to kick off a photo shoot right away. He inquired about what they intended to photograph, and she responded that this would be her debut. They were set to capture their entire experience. It would mark Yami's announcement, captured properly by them. Still, the protagonist was in disbelief, asking her to hold on a moment since it all felt too abrupt. Noticing his uncertainty, Melia began to feel anxious. She questioned if he was truly going to back out now that they had arrived. The reason he brought Mia to the hotel like this must have hinted at his expectations from the start. He attempted to explain that he wasn't, thinking she wouldn't want to stay at her place given the circumstances. She sighed, telling him not to deceive her. It was all just a huge mess, and it frustrated her. It was hard to believe he felt nothing for her in moments like these. She knew he was likely trying to act proper, but still, she wondered if he thought that made him a good person, and decided to ask directly. She questioned whether the protagonist had come here with ulterior motives, and the answer should have been clear. Mia laughed because his justifications for the hotel and his actions were utterly contradictory. Plus, every time they took photos, she noticed how much he was affected by their shared moments. Kate didn't even seem to bother hiding it, but it wasn't a big deal. It was absurd, almost as if he wanted to be noticed. Once more, Maya concluded that Key wanted to engage with her, which is why she decided to let him have his way. Mia had already been used anyway. At this rate, she might end up entangled with another guy she barely knew. She recognized the danger in what she was doing. That's why she thought it best to resolve things once and for all. Under these conditions, Maya preferred to choose someone rather than be with a complete stranger. In other words, Maya was prepared to offer the protagonist something that would hold immense value for other guys. and she was doing it willingly, so he could do as he pleased. Perhaps that wasn't sufficient for him. She suggested they could film it since it sounded fun too, as long as they could go all the way. Then she pushed him onto the bed. Leah felt a surge of happiness because she thought he would agree to her request. However, he simply restrained her with a serious look. Her surprise at his reaction was complete. Finally, he declared that he wouldn't engage in this with her. She froze at his rejection. He explained that just because a friend begged him for something, he couldn't exploit her. That wasn't how he wanted things to unfold, and he disliked such situations no matter how much she insisted. Mia was furious and shoved the protagonist away. She told him to shut up and pay attention to who he was addressing. After all, he had always been focused on her, taking pictures and even profiting from it. But when she needed him the most, he was going to abandon her. She couldn't grasp what was going on in his mind. After the protagonist cursed at him for pretending to be a good guy while being different, she sighed. Kate chuckled, remarking on how foul-mouthed she became when angry. Yet Maya remained enraged. She asked what his aim was with all this, and if they were merely going to act like friends. Perhaps his plan was to take advantage of her when she least expected it. But Mia was at least relieved that she wasn't mistaken about him. She was born from someone who had lost all hope. In that case, he would likely face the same fate. She had heard that Key's mother had vanished suddenly, likely off with another man by now. Previously, Maya had mentioned that her mother was a hysterical woman, so she should assume the same traits applied to her as well. After calming down, it was clear Maya was in a tough spot, desperate. Her remark about the fruit not falling far from the tree was almost comical. There she was, believing they could truly connect. Yet it appeared Muya had picked the wrong person. She started to dress again, getting ready to head home. The rest was now in Key's hands. He attempted to rise and grasp her shoulders, but she retaliated with a sharp push. Now every touch sent chills and fury through her. He inquired about her destination. Then he quickly decided to settle the hotel bill before chasing after her. It didn't take long for the main character to spot the girl sitting on the curb across the street from his hand. As he hurried closer, headlights suddenly appeared from behind. It nearly struck him. They barely dodged the impact, but the car halted right in front of Mia. She climbed inside. Inside the vehicle, a man remarked he knew. He thought she would actually go this far. He believed it was all a big joke. But he felt pleased, as he could continue his massage with Mia, meaning yummy in person. Must be a fantasy. He urged her to enter the car so they could leave quickly. It would be bad if others spotted them. So she got in, but Key stood in front of the vehicle. To prevent their departure, the protagonist opened the door, wanting to say something to Mia. The man grumbled about Key being such a sore loser. He exited the car to confront Key, asking if he had a plan or if he wanted cash to back off. Regardless, he intended to call the authorities. But the protagonist yanked Mia from the car anyway. He told the man to mind his own business. He was the one in deeper trouble than Key. After all, he was attempting to take a minor away at this hour, which could be seen as kidnapping. The police would likely just warn Key, but it would be different for an older man like him. He couldn't report it whenever he wanted, which made the man relent and abandon the two. Once the tension eased, the protagonist exhaled in relief. That was too close to disaster and his heart raced. He might have admitted to doing worse things that day than he realized. He still blocked her path. Even when she sought his advice, all he could offer were answers devoid of dignity. She had mustered the courage to ask Key for what she desired, but he had turned her down. His grip on her wrist was terrifying. Key apologized upon hearing this, but even I felt sympathy because, despite everything she had said earlier, he had still rescued her. Even with his foolish actions, Key chased after her. Though she mirrored her mother's violence and hysteria, the protagonist assisted her. Even as she forced her demands upon him, she couldn't grasp Key's issues or what he truly wanted. As the girl wept, curled against the wall, the protagonist paused in silence before he began to speak. He expressed that, honestly, he wanted to learn more about Maya. This took her by surprise. She wondered if he intended to confess, but Key replied he wasn't because he didn't see any of this as love. So he confessed that he had been viewing things differently since then. But beyond that, he felt it was inappropriate to confess anything while she was in this state. Mia questioned if this wasn't love in the end, but he responded that he didn't want to initiate a relationship just for show. After all, they had only recently met and hadn't even had a proper conversation despite all the photo sessions. That's why he felt it wasn't sufficient. Holding her hand, Keith declared he wanted to change that. They could converse and understand each other better, then determine what kind of relationship they could pursue in the future. It didn't matter if they ended up as friends or lovers. The truth was that Kai wanted to be part of Maya's life. Malia's cheeks flushed. That reaction wasn't exactly suitable either. Key felt a jolt of tension, realizing he may have upset her. Still, she grasped his perspective, which is why she held his hand too. They both agreed to give their relationship a fresh start. Mia mentioned feeling more like friends than lovers, but she appreciated it. This way, they could enjoy each other's company, even if it made her blush. The protagonist felt a bit awkward hearing that. Then she leaned in to say they could cultivate a strong bond. They decided to keep their photo sessions going. And so, the video wraps up here. To catch the next episode, make sure to hit that notification bell. Until next time on Juicy Channel.